Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending November 12th. We've got a big show tonight. Bringing back our friend Vegas Runner's going to join us. We're going to be talking about the money. He's going to tell us where it's going in some key college and NFL games. We're going to have another segment of Handicappers Corner. We've got some great angles that our man Ralph Michaels uncovered, and one of them is absolutely mind-boggling. When I read it, I had to read it a second time because I didn't believe it. And then, of course, we've got a breakdown of this weekend's big college and NFL games. And then, of course, we close it out with best bets at the end of the show. And we're going to have an extra best bet this week as well, because we're going to make our man Vegas Runner give us one before this first segment's over. So we've got Mark Seidel behind the controls. We've got Ralph Michaels, Dave Cokin in studio. Let's bring that first guest in, and it is Vegas Runner. Let's get the party started, guys. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. VR, how you doing, my man?
Never better, man. Busy time. College basketball kicked off 2 nights ago. NBA, NHL, NFL, college football. Then you throw in things like NASCARs and UFCs, and there's a lot on the board to bet, and anytime you're a bettor, that's what you want to see. The more options you have, the better chance you have of spotting inefficiency or a mistake. That's what I believe.
It's like the buffet of sports season for us, and we all know that I like the buffet. So
no better time, right, with the holidays coming, too. This is the best time to be betting.
Hey, quick question for you. Ralph had a UFC question. Before he gets to his question, I want you to tell our listeners a little bit of news for you this week with UFC. Tell them about it. I do the pick segment for them for all the pay-per-views I've done like for the last year with good results, and now they signed that new deal with ESPN, so they're going to start producing a lot more content, UFC content for ESPN, and obviously the UFC has embraced sports betting pretty much more than anybody else, and they want to push a lot of sports betting content, UFC does, and they're putting together a new show that'll be more numbers related and covering it also from a Vegas perspective, a gambling perspective, that I'll be a part of, that they asked me to be involved in. I'm going to come in for a segment and give them a couple best bets and most likely cover the card from a Vegas perspective, but I was just honored they asked me because, like I say, there's so many people covering the fight game that I follow, that really know their stuff. So I'm just glad to be a part of it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
VR, one of the news here, obviously, we cover UFC, and you guys do it, and it's big news in Vegas, is the weight change. How will that affect anything you do handicapping the UFC?
It's going to make a big difference. I mean, I'm so glad you asked that question. I mean, if you listen to the fighters, they want more weight classes. I mean, they've been lobbying for more weight classes. Not as many as boxing, but they do want more because there's a lot of gaps, 15, 20-pound gaps in between, and there's a lot of guys that wish there were more weight classes. With that said, they just got rid of the 125-pound division in the men's. Listen, they traded one of the biggest stars in if not one of the greatest fighters of all time, in Demetrius Johnson, who was their 125-pound champ for a while till he lost, broke every record, just lost in his last bout. So once he left, it was kind of the writing on the wall that they're not too excited about this division. They rather move some of the key guys up. But I was really surprised that they're going to cut a lot of these guys, meaning they're not even giving them a chance to go up to 135. There's a handful of guys I heard that they're going to say, okay, we're going to keep your contract. You could move up in weight to 135. That'll be the new lowest for the men's divisions. But a lot of guys are getting their pink slips, like, you're cut. We don't even want you to gain weight and go up to 135. So, I mean, there's a lot going on right now with that lower weight class. But this is going to give other, mixed martial art federations, or call them what you will, I think they're going to go ahead and start promoting more of these lower weight classes, kind of maybe Bellator will, or one UFC, whatever they are. So you may see them guys still fighting, but not in the UFC, man. They don't want that weight division. I want to see when the guys move up, the 125ers up to 135, how handicapping that and how the odds makers are going to approach it. That's going to be a huge change.
VR, we're going to head to college football, and we've got some games this weekend. where there's some interesting lines, and I want to talk to you about. And you've got access to accounts, and by that we've told our listeners many times, but we always have new listeners every week. You have access to some of the sharpest accounts around big betting syndicates. You get to peek in behind the window and see what they're betting, and tell us about some of the games. I know one of them in the Big 12, and this one intrigues me. I can't wait to hear where you're telling me they're at, because I actually like a side in this one. TCU and West Virginia. West Virginia coming off that thrilling game last week against Texas, where they scored in the final seconds of the game, and instead of kicking the extra point and going to overtime, they rolled the dice and they went for the 2. They rode the momentum and they got the 2-point conversion and won the game. Where is the money coming on TCU and West Virginia?
I think when it's all said and done come Saturday, when the public speaks, I think you're going to see pretty good two-way action from the public. Probably a lot of West Virginia teasers. They tease those big favorites for some reason. But the multiple betting syndicates that I provide accounts for bet TCU. I mean, not just TCU at 14, TCU all the way down to plus 13.5, plus 13, plus 12.5, plus 12, even some 11.5. That's why you're seeing 11.5 now. So it's sharp money. It's a legit move on TCU. And quickly, the reason is simple. West Virginia, number 9th ranked team in the country. Most guys that I know that do well in college football don't even have West Virginia in their top 20. So maybe it's a spot where the wise guys think they're a little bit overvalued, overrated. So, yeah, a lot of wise guy money on TCU catching double digits.
You know, moving to the Oklahoma State-Oklahoma game, we saw Oklahoma open 18.5, and all we've seen is line move. Is it sharps, public, or both?
What happens with these big teams that put up points, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the Oklahomas, more times than not, a lot of these betting syndicates, what I see is they try to get out ahead of the market. And what I mean by that is they're betting the favorite early in the week. The line moves 3 or 4 points. On game day, they come back and bet the dog. Not for more money, simply setting up a middle because they know which way the market's going to move, and they're trying to take advantage of that. So I wouldn't go as far as saying Oklahoma's a real position. As far as public money, it's early in the week. And with all these sports going on, most recreational bettors are going to wait till Saturday to bet their college football. They're not going to tie up their bankroll this early. So it has been sharp money pushing up that Oklahoma, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a take back with Oklahoma State come Saturday. What is a real move for sure is the over. Anytime they go over right away on a total this high, more times than not, it's going to be legit. But with that said, when the totals move as significantly as they do in college sports, come game day, sometimes you'll see it coming back the other way. That doesn't mean there's sharp money on the under, or that's now the move, or it was a setup or anything like that. It's a simple case of when you have a 4+, 5+ point middle on a total, you're going to take it. I mean, it's just common sense. So a lot of times you'll see that if you don't get it, I always say wait, and you'll see the line sometimes come back a little bit. So the over is definitely a sharp move. Public's going to be over too, so the books are going to be praying for a low-scoring game in that one.
AVR, you said a 4 or 5 point middle with a line that's going to be, high 60s, low 70s. When you have a total in the low 40s, is a 3-point middle enough to take both sides?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the perfect question for that, because in college sports we do see, especially in college football, you see such different scoring compared to the NFL. You're not going to see a 78 total in the NFL. And because of that, the higher the total, the more points you want in your middle. But if you got a college football game in the 40s or even low 50s, a 3-point total middle, especially around key numbers, you're going to want to work that for a little bit at least. And you got to remember, when a account's labeled as sharp, it doesn't matter how much they're betting. The fact that they're betting, the book's going to adjust. So even when they buy back a little, the book's going to adjust right away. So it'll look like it's a steam move where it's nothing more than just working up a middle because it's available.
A game that whenever I put the lines in my book for the openers and I looked at it, and I had to look twice because this one just absolutely baffled me. You got Northwestern. They're number one, first place in the West Division of the Big Ten. Iowa coming off back-to-back gut-wrenching losses for them. And I saw the number at double digits at 10, and we all know the stat regarding Northwestern. If you blindly bet the underdog in Northwestern games this year, I think you're 8-0-1. You got the push last week with the Notre Dame game. And to see Iowa, double-digit favorite, and then you look at the total, and the total was in the 40s. We talk about we just don't see totals in the 40s that often. Opened at 47, and I'm seeing this thing down, 43.5. It's coming down, and yet we're still at a double-digit number, and it's actually ticked up a little bit. Is this really sharp money coming in on Iowa?
110%. That much I can tell you with certainty, because it got hit in every single account and by multiple groups. The fact that this line isn't up to 13.5, I'm surprised. And the reason for that is what you said. When you look at this number, it throws you off. You think, is there an injury? What's the reasoning behind it? You got 5-4 against 6-3 and a double-digit spread. So this is a case where I think the books are saying we know we're going to get Northwestern money Saturday. Let's not open up the line that much. Let's not, number one, open up a 3 or 4 point middle. But more importantly, let's not give the bettors on Saturday a dog of Northwestern at plus 13.5 or more. So they're taking a position here and saying, we'll take all that short money at 11, we'll keep taking it, knowing they're going to get the other side come Saturday from the public. Because this is going to be a situation where you got the wise guys on one side and you got the public on the other. Because there's going to be a lot of public money on Northwestern come Saturday.
VR moving to the NFL, and we have a matchup between Washington and Tampa Bay, and both teams have had their ups and both teams have had their downs, a few more downs than up. And what it was around to pick them early, now all of a sudden we have a decent-sized favorite. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised, and here's why. Tampa Bay is one of those teams you kind of want to back as an underdog. They're not all that often in the favorites role, let alone doing great in it. I mean, this year they've been a favorite 2 times, I believe, and nothing higher than 3.5 points. So it's a little bit surprising, but yeah, that's definitely wise guy money on Tampa Bay. Usually with the NFL, you don't see as significant moves unless it's injury related or something along those lines. So it kind of shows you the amount of money that was bet on Tampa Bay to get it up to that key number of 3. Now, some books don't want to go to 3, and they're holding that 2.5 and making you lay 125 to bet it because, again, when it goes to 3, you're opening up an obvious middle for these guys. If I have Tampa -1, I'm going to have a Washington +3 ticket in my pocket just for some money, even if I don't like that side. So I think that's why a lot of books are still 2.5, but there's enough short money on Tampa Bay that it should be 3 across the board.
VR, this next one, you've talked many times. We've done videos and podcasts together, and you talk about sharps, and you say pros don't bet teams. They bet numbers. Well, if you tell me they're betting Oakland, I got to definitely believe they're betting a number because there's no way in hell they could be betting this Oakland Raider team because this team, pure and simple, they are in total free fall. The performance that they put on when we saw them last against the San Francisco 49ers, a quarterback that hadn't taken a snap in the NFL, undrafted quarterback in Nick Mullins, he made them look absolutely sick. 34 points he put up on the Raider defense. But more astonishing, this Raider offense only scored 3 points in that game, and it's just getting worse for the Raiders. Tell me, who is betting this game, and what are they betting?
The Raiders gave up 42 to Cleveland, 42 to Indianapolis, 34 to San Francisco. What's attractive with the Raiders? I think you're absolutely right, Marco. And I'll take a page out of your book. No team's ever as good as they look or as bad as they look in any given week. So maybe that also adds a little bit to the Oakland side. But I can tell you for sure they're taking the double digits with Oakland. And the only reason, again, this line hasn't dropped is because of the beating the books took last week, when that happens to them, when they lose the kind of money they lost last week, when it hurts that much, when it stings the following week, they let it show. And that's why you're seeing a lot of double-digit favorites in the NFL this week. They're doing no favors to anyone. And I think that's one of these cases where long-term we know if you did nothing else, Marco, if you didn't handicap at all, and for the last 10 years you just woke up on Sunday or Thursday night and Monday night and looked at the schedule and said, any home dog of double digits, I'm going to bet them blindly, you just cash 6 out of 10 tickets, 60% against the spread, just doing that. And both of us will tell you, if you could go 60% against the spread, you don't have to work. So yeah, I think it's a case where long-term it's plus EV coupled with Oakland, looking as bad as they did, and the Chargers, this line was 8 last week, so they adjusted it a little bit based on how bad Oakland looked. I think it's one of those plays where it just, again, it's a number more than anything else because nothing about this team can be attractive to take them.
Well, we're going to finish up this NFL segment with a even bigger line. And, some people I've talked to say, well, sharps aren't going to mess around with a 17-point spread, and they're not going to lay it. No one's going to bet Arizona. And this team, this game really hasn't moved that much, but yet there's some sharp money, and we don't always see it. Tell us about it in this instance.
Yeah, and we thought earlier in the year what happened with a 17-point favorite that didn't get there, with Minnesota against Buffalo. Now, will that happen again? Only time will tell. But you're seeing whenever a 17 pops up, there's someone there to grab it. A couple books that went down to 16.5 when they got hit at 17, then bumped back up to 17. Every time they went to 17, there's been a mover or sharp there waiting to pick off that 17. So that's the number that these groups are looking for that think, Arizona offers them value. Again, personally, I haven't touched that game. I got to agree with it. I mean, how bad can you be? You're in the NFL. You've won 2 games at least. 17 points, I couldn't lay it. Even if they win by 40, personally, I just couldn't lay it. So I could see why they're taking the 17. But again, this is one of those weeks, man, where you're seeing some big numbers, especially on those high-profile teams that have been covering of late.
Well, VR, I'm a situational guy, and the situation in this game actually is very favorable for Arizona. You got Arizona that is coming off a bye week, and if you remember, prior to the bye week, they made a change. Byron Leftwich there in Arizona, the OC now. So now you've got that extra week to work, with what he wants to run.
And they cut Bradford, so the change is final. It's definite. Yeah.
Well, Bradford was never coming back anyways. Bradford. How much money did they spend for 3 games? Was it even 3 games for them? But you look at it. The flip side to it is, so you got a positive for Arizona with the extra week to prepare, and then on the flip side to Kansas City, we know they've been an offensive machine, and they go up and down the field. But the one thing we haven't seen this year is Andy Reid's true colors. He's so many times that conservative Andy takes his foot off the gas. If we're ever going to see that from him, it's going to be this week, and I'll tell you why. You look at what Kansas City has just had to do. They went to Cleveland last week. Granted, it was the Browns, but they had to travel to Cleveland. They come home for this one game, and what do they got up next? They got the L.A. Rams in Mexico in the altitude. This game's going to be played at high altitude in Mexico. That's going to be a barn burner. They're going to go up and down the field, both teams, because neither team has a good defense, and they both have stellar offenses. Don't you think Andy Reid's going to want to get in and get out of this game, shorten this game? Maybe we'll see some more running from Kansas City. Maybe we'll see them stay in the huddle a little bit longer and, use all of the play clock and just get in and get out, save his players for next week. I know it looks ugly, but there's only one way I could play this game, and that's take the points.
Marco, I'm just going to be devil's advocate for a second. Or perhaps we see Andy Reid running double reverse quarterback plays in the second half to give the Rams something extra to think about.
All right, yeah, go back to the corner. We're not going to get anybody hurt. I thought you were going to say that maybe they came out and try to smoke them in the first half and maybe rest players in the second half. But still, against the bad defense, if you're resting players, what are you going to rest? You got a chance for the back door. So there's where I'm at. Hey, VR, before we get to your best bet, tell us what you got going this week at WagerTalk, and tell listeners, what they can look forward to. Get something big. We're dropping a bomb this week.
Came to drop bombs, brother. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, tonight I fired my first NBA big move. The first one I fired all season. And what's crazy is I've made 52 bets in the NFL in NBA already. 35-17 on premium, so a little over around 67%. Really good, and 5-0 on anything 750 or bigger. But I haven't stepped out and really dropped bombs yet. I'm patient when it comes to that. If I like something, I'm not afraid to fire, and I just wasn't able to see something worth coming out double pockets. But today I did, and I unloaded on a game tonight. And come Sunday, honestly, I don't like labeling things like, because there's always going to be a game a year from now or whatever that you like more. But I can tell you, going into this Sunday, there's a game that I circle that I'm going to bet the most I bet on the NFL this entire season is going to be on this game on Sunday. Win or lose, that much I can promise you that it'll be backed by my own money. The most I bet on the NFL. I think this game's offering me more value, better situation, and I got it confirmed by multiple groups that like that same side. So I'm doing it. I'm dropping it over at WagerTalk, brother. That's on Sunday. So make sure if you're willing to ride with me on that one, rest assured, ace unloaded.
All right, good stuff, VR. We'll talk to you again down the road, have you on, and when the next big UFC matchup comes up, too, we'll have you on to share some UFC best bets with that, and look forward to seeing you whenever they get that show started. When are they going to air the first one?
With the next pay-per-view, that's the first week of December, so I think we're taping it the week prior.
All right, good stuff. All right. We're going to take a quick – oh, no, wait. We got to get a best bet. I almost send you on your way before you gave us a best bet. I can't do that, VR.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a couple here cocked and loaded. So I was like, he doesn't ask. I'm going to have to text this to him.
All right. Give me a best bet, my friend.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the NFL, Marco, and I'm going to Cincinnati and New Orleans, and I'm going to bet the unbettable, and I'm going under on New Orleans game. Yes, I'm going under on the New Orleans Saints, who put up 45 points last week. Listen, styles make fights. I know it sounds cliche, but styles make games as well. And I just think this game for the Saints has letdown spot written all over it, and just for them to get through with a win will be a big deal. I mean, this is a team that's now going to be playing their third road game in 4 weeks, and you add with that the fact that they were playing Minnesota, Baltimore, and the Rams, and not easy games. And who's on deck? The Super Bowl champs Philadelphia, followed by the Atlanta Falcons divisional game. So, I mean, this is just the kind of game I think the Saints come out flat in, who I'm high on. And Cincinnati coming off scoring all those points against Tampa Bay. This ain't Tampa Bay they're going to be playing. So I don't see Cincinnati being able to go up and down the field easily, especially if they can't run the ball. Saints haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher, I think, all year, I believe. I don't think they're going to do that Sunday. So I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game compared to that 54 that's hung up there.
All right, good stuff. VR says to take the Saints and Bengals under the total on Sunday as his best bet. As always, Ace, thanks for stopping by. We'll have you on board again, and we're going to step out for a quick break. When we come back, it's going to be Handicappers Corner. Ralph is going to drop some knowledge on us in Handicappers Corner. That's up next.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It is Handicappers Corner time. Before we get to Handicappers Corner, I want to tell everybody about a special deal at WagerTalk this week. We ran this one a few weeks back, and it was a huge success. I said I wasn't going to run it again. It's too good of a deal. But you know what? College basketball officially started this week. And I know, Ralph, you were like a kid on Christmas morning there, Tuesday morning, with the opening of all those college hoops. And got out of the gate pretty good. What, 3-1 on
3-1, and it's 4-1 now. Cash to play last night, and not only do you get my plays, I put my opinions on there. Whenever I have a play that I'm selling, I put games that were close to being plays as well, and 3-1 on those as well. So it's a nice overall start. The numbers that I have for the teams have worked out. The situations have worked out. We'll talk about one of them in a second, but it's tough for bookmakers to make numbers. 2 weeks ago, they were handicapping the NFL. They were handicapping college football. They were handicapping the NHL. They were handicapping the NBA. Well, what happened? 1 week went by, and then all of a sudden, you're adding 143 college basketball games on Tuesday alone. There's 32 divisions in college basketball. There's 353 Division I teams. That's why there's some value out there, and that's why every number can't be sharp like it is in the NFL.
Absolutely, and like I said, you're off to a good start. I am off to one of my best starts ever in the basketball season. Early on, I'm very selective. I don't put out a lot of plays, Ralph. I've only had 5 plays so far, 4 NBA, 1 college basketball play, but I can't do any better than I've done. We're off to a 5-0 start. Excited about that. Football running well. With me, it's always that way. The further I get into the season, the more data I got to work with and the more situations that line up just right. And right now, all plays, Ralph, I'm on a 12-3 run, last 15 plays. Going back to October 14th, 28-13, which has resulted in a bankroll increase of 42.6%. I'm not a high-volume guy. We've got a lot of guys, and there's nothing wrong with, guys that do high volume, low volume, whatever. It's what is your comfort zone. And for me, I like releasing 1 to 3 plays a day. I don't like exposing my bankroll. It's a more conservative approach, but it has kept me in the game for 39 years. Done well with it, and we're having a good run right now. And coupled with your run, Dave's on a run, a lot of guys at the site hot, Bobby Leagues, the Prez is killing it. You can check out any capper you want this week. This is the deal. A 3-day package costs $59. And that in itself is a great deal because you got all the sports, all the plays. If somebody has a 5% play, Ralph, on a Saturday or a Sunday, that play alone is a $30 play. You get a 3-day package for $59. But we're doing it better this week. To celebrate the start of college basketball, we are offering a 7-day package for the price of 3. That means you're picking up 7 days that's normally $99. You're getting it for just $59. You get every play, all those 5% plays, all sports. Pick your favorite capper, and you're not limited to just one. It's use coupon code TV59, and you can use that coupon as many times as you want, as many cappers as you want. The only stipulation, you got to do it before kickoff of the Monday Night Football game. Once the game kicks off, that coupon will expire, and that deal will be gone. I can't tell you if we'll bring it back again. I wasn't going to bring it back after we ran it the first time, but we decided to do it for the start of college basketball, get everybody on board and let you see how much of a benefit it is getting all the plays, right? Because this way you're not picking and choosing and jumping on just because there's a big play. And I know guys love to see those big plays, Ralph, but I don't know. I've been in this business 39 years. It always baffles me, Ralph, where somebody might be running 60% overall on all of their plays, but somebody else has a big play, and maybe they're only hitting 50% at the time. They're not really killing it, but they want that big play rather than the guy that's just seeing the whole board well. I think a subscription is the best way to go. You get everything.
Yeah, I have fewer plays than a lot of people, fewer 5% plays. Now I have more volume, but, a couple people reached out to me on Twitter. Well, they missed the game yesterday in college basketball. I had a winner, and they said, well, why couldn't I buy it? And, well, I had 2 football games up, so that was my package. So the only way to get my college basketball play was with an all-access. So not only are you saving money, it actually gives you access to all the plays, whereas if you wanted to buy them daily, you wouldn't be able to get all those plays. So, again, it seems like a silly thing, but the only way to be guaranteed to get everyone's plays is to have that all-access package.
Absolutely. And speaking of college basketball, Ralph, we do these you do these angles for our radio show. It's if you're in the Las Vegas area, you can listen 2 to 3 every weekday Pacific time. We put the podcast up of the show right after the show. You can listen to it. And we have a segment. It's sponsored by a restaurant here in town, Joe's Prime Seafood and Crab. And I was there this week for my birthday. What a restaurant. It's a great restaurant. But they sponsor a segment of the show, and it's called Joe's Angle of the Day. And you come up with these angles. You go into the database from our good friend Ed Meyer, use his database and pull out these numbers. And it's been an incredible run. I know I do the show Monday and Tuesday, and I think we were on like a 19-4 run when I was on the show.
I had doubled up a record on that. We corrected it. It was 16-4 over the last 3 weeks.
Okay,
we
so
had an
still
8-0 week, and then this past week was a 6-0 week. And it did lose yesterday on Wednesday night. We had a football angle. But, to say, hey, we lost the last angle and we're still 16-5, that's a pretty positive thing to be able to say.
That is. I'll take 16-5 any day you want to deal that out, my friend. You've got an angle for us in college basketball. It's with home favorites. And this is an interesting one. We're talking about early season basketball, which is a different handicap, because you give the angle and then we'll break it down a little bit.
Well, Marco had said we need something to talk about on Handicappers Corner, so we decided to talk about November records, and most of it was based on football. So what type of records are different in football in November? And then I went into basketball, and I wanted to look at how November home favorites have done compared to the rest of the year. Well, excuse me, most recently, November home favorites are hitting 55.3%. That's pretty significant. You have a lot of teams who start off the season refreshed. You have teams that all have hope because it's the opening day. You have these teams, excuse me, you have these teams that are rarely home favorites, and sometimes they bring in a lesser foe to play their home game. Well, during the rest of basketball season from December through March, home favorites are only 50.8%, so actually under what you would, the break-even point if you're adding juice. So in November, with those situations, again, at 55%, you're not going to get rich. But don't be afraid to have more home favorites on your card than in other months because of the season starting and everyone 0-0 with that brand new fresh start.
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll have teams that are going to be overrated or underrated, and more often than times, there's teams that are underrated. The game I used on opening day was a home favorite, and when you looked at the number, just based on, forget digging into looking at the teams, but you just look at the names. You had BYU at Nevada. They were getting 12 points in that game. Well, when you think of BYU, you think immediately of those games in the 60s, low 60s, and BYU hanging around as a dog. But the fact of the matter is this Nevada team's loaded. They brought back 3 starters and everything. And then I like to look at coaches' records, somebody that's been there a while. Look at their records, what they've done. And he's had a tremendous record in the month of November with his teams. He gets off to quick starts. So it does make sense to look at these angles like that and, good stuff. And then, a lot of times you get situations where the blue chip programs, it's always a rebuild, like Duke the other night.
It's a reload. It's not a rebuild.
It's not a rebuild. Yeah.
It's Duke, it's Kentucky, it's Kansas. Those teams get NBA players. In fact, Duke returned 0 starters this year. They had 4 players drafted in the NBA. There's only 60 players drafted. 3 teams had 4 players drafted. They were Duke, Kentucky, and Villanova. Duke's recruiting class, people talk about the Fab Five at Michigan. I mean, this team would be a 25-point favorite over the Fab Five at Michigan.
25?
You potentially are going to have the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 NBA draft picks next year as freshmen on your team this year. That's how good that Duke recruiting class was.
Yeah, and it's at the beginning of the season. They haven't even had a chance to gel yet. Wait till this team gels. It's going to be scary. All right, you got another one for us. We're talking about this is one we've talked about before, and this is something that the rest of the season's going to be, a situation that comes up because we talk about, towel tossers, when the season is over. Well, when the season's over, officially for a team is when they get that 7th loss. They're not going to a bowl game.
Miami of Ohio a few years ago started the season 0-6. Well, his coach every week could say, our goal is still in place. We can still get to 6 wins. We can still get to a bowl. Well, they happen to be the first ever team that started 0-6, won their last 6 games, and got to a bowl. So now these coaches can look back and say, hey, look, Miami of Ohio did it a few years ago. We can do it. So I wanted to break down the situations on how teams do after you get your 7th loss. After your 7th loss, your goals are shot. Yes, there's an occasional team that gets in if there's not enough bowl-eligible teams. But again, you don't know that situation until it happens later in the year. So there's no way you can motivate or coach that way. So, Marco, I just wanted to take each of the 4 situations. These numbers are since 2010. And just blindly, if you play a team that lost their last game and that was their 7th loss, since 2010, you are 138, 198, and 4, 41%. So you're at 58.6% blindly playing on a team off their deflating 7th loss.
Playing against them.
Playing against the team, excuse me.
That's incredible. Just, we talk about you never should do anything blindly, but whenever you've got a sport-wide angle like that, you can make sense of it.
It's a system. It's not an angle because it's not team-specific. And I give 3 or 4 times the weight, maybe even 5 or 10 times the weight of a system versus a team, because a team can have a certain coach that is unique in a certain situation, or they can have a crowd edge, which is different than other teams. But when you're looking at every team over the last 8 years in college football, that shows there's some significance to the meaning of this angle.
Absolutely. And then you broke it down in every one of the categories. You have home favorites, which that was the least amount there, or closest to the break-even.
And I didn't list the teams that were in that role this week because it's 48%. It's basically break-even. It's 24 and 26. So why list something that's 48%? So, yes, there are some teams that fit the home favorite role, but at 48%, it's not worth your time or my time to mention them. Continue on, Marcos.
All right. Home dogs. This one, 46, 65, and 1. 41.4%. So obviously, if you flip that around, that becomes another 58.6% winning angle going against those home dogs. And there are 3 of them this week: Arkansas, Old Dominion, South Alabama. Now, the Arkansas one is, I'm going to bring that one up, Ralph, because there's another angle that we talk about, and that's the Dream Crusher scenario. They're facing LSU this week, and you got to wonder LSU how they're going to be coming off the Alabama game, where they went into that game, which was ridiculous, being the number 3 team in the polls, of the 4 teams, but losing that game and then falling, way out the way they did. How do they react? And it's a rivalry game, and that's another angle that you do have to look at. Even though a team's out of their playoff, out of their going to a bowl game, you do have to look with the end of the season when these teams play their rival. And this is a game that Arkansas LSU generally is not played this early in November. This is a game I can remember many of leftover turkey sandwiches on Friday afternoon.
At 2:30 Eastern.
2:30 Eastern.
CBS, yep.
The wife would be out shopping Black Friday. I'd be sitting there eating leftover turkey, watching LSU Arkansas. So, this is a spot where, although the angle calls to go against them, I got to put an asterisk on it.
And again, you're not going to just blindly play a team because it's on this angle. And another reason not to play Arkansas is they have a first-year head coach. They completely had to change systems from Brett Bielema's rush attack. So you have a bunch of kids that came into this year knowing they're going to have to struggle a little bit this year to change systems, but they know this coach is going to be back next year, and they're making strides. So, again, there's subsets in this. A new head coach certainly is one of them. Now, one of them that is the least profitable or the best play on doesn't have any situations, and it's only happened 20 times in the last 8 years, and that is if you got your 7th loss in your last game and now you're an away favorite. And you would expect them to do poorly, and they've done exactly that, going just 6-14, 30%. So keep an eye on that next week. If any team this week gets their 7th loss and next week is an away favorite, that is a 6-14 record or a 30% play on that team, or you want to play the home dog against that away favorite.
Yeah, that turns around to a 70% winning angle. And as you said, that's the least number of plays. And it makes sense because there's not going to be that many road favorites that have 7 losses.
Yeah,
so,
you have to be playing a very bad team. Yeah.
And the last one is the away dogs. And if you play the away dogs that have their 7th loss, it's 52-81-2. 39.1%. Well, we know you turn that around, that's 60.9% the other way, fading those teams. And you've got a slew of them this week. You've got Rutgers, Louisville. Oh, God, is this Louisville team? My God, are they bad. UCLA, Navy, North Carolina, Georgia State, our hometown UNLV Running Rebels, and Oregon State. Quite a few teams there to go ahead and go against as away dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just use it part of it. If you like a team for a reason and they're in one of these negative situations, it makes your play stronger. And, or perhaps it may take you off a game, and that's fine. Never be afraid to leave a game off the board. You'll benefit in the long run, saving your 10% juice.
Yep, and let's go to teams off a bye week in the month of November. Now, we know, the bye weeks, we talk about them in, college football and in the NFL. Sometimes they're momentum stoppers. Other times they're well needed whenever, teams are banged up and need that extra week to heal up. Tell us the numbers you ran on this one and what you came up with.
Only 2 of the situations were profitable, so those are the 2 I wrote down that we're going to mention. But again, I went back since 2010, so that gives us a nice 8-year range to play on. And it's simply teams off a November bye that are a double-digit away favorite. Positive or negative, Marco? What do you think?
Double-digit away favorite, you would think that would be a positive because you're coming off the bye. You've got, momentum. You're
rested, and you're playing a worse team.
And you're getting points. I would think it's a positive.
Yeah, I sort of thought it would be 2, or at least a little bit above the median line. But, while they are 32-5 straight up, again, that's a double-digit favorite record. That doesn't surprise anyone. They're actually 13-23-1 against the spread, 36.1%. There's only one team that fits that mold this week is North Texas. North Texas is off a bye. They're a double-digit away favorite this week. And again, it would say to fade North Texas at a 62.9% clip.
The last one that you have off the bye week is a double-digit home dog. They're 1-35 straight up, Ralph, and that's, 1-35 surprising. But the old equalizer, the point spread, turns that around to 25-16-1 against the spread.
And you'll notice the 2 teams are Arkansas and Old Dominion. Those are the 2 teams we were supposed to play against in the system above. So don't write down Arkansas and Old Dominion on one system. Another system's telling you they're actually a positive play on. So clearly, those are 2 situations you're just going to throw out the window at the end of the week when you have all your information.
Good stuff, Ralph. We got one more. This was the shocker, and you sent this one to me. I read it. I looked at it, and I said, what? I looked at it again. Teams in November playing a second straight home game versus a foe playing a second straight road game. Well, obviously, you sit there and think, well, I'm at home 2 weeks in a row. We didn't travel. We got rested. Our routine's normal. The other team's on the road. You've got to travel. You go to your game. You lose time depending on how far of a road game it is, where you travel the day you travel that week. Then you play the game, and then you turn around, go home, and you got to play on the road again. Sometimes, if it's a cross-country trip both weeks, teams
mostly November you're playing your conference games, so you're not going to have that situation because this is a November angle. So that probably isn't going to come unless you're Hawaii, who may be making some crazy trips. But again, you said you looked at it twice. Marco, I had to rerun this 3 times because I thought I was doing something wrong. Then I went to look at the scenarios, and I made sure those situations were right, and it is mind-boggling. A home team for a second straight week against a team on the road for a second straight week, 25, 55, and 4, 31.2%. So when you have a team making a second road game, those teams are winning at a rate of 68.8% against the spread against the team home for a second straight. Again, that's where you might hear people say, you might think you might have someone on a radio that says, oh, I like this team. They're home for a second straight. This team's tired. They're traveling. And all of a sudden you think it's a good record. Well, BS. Look at what the true numbers tell you, and that's exactly what we're showing you. Marco, the 2 situations, the 2 teams that are in that negative role this week.
One of them's Friday night, and this is actually an interesting game because Boise State is a home underdog, Ralph, for the first time in forever on the Blue
Third time since 2000.
Yeah, this is crazy, playing Fresno State. And the other one is Arizona State in the Pac-12. Those are the 2 this week that you're supposed to fade. We'll see what happens. It'll start off Friday night on the Smurf turf.
And the more I thought about it after the fact, number one, a lot of these November games are rivalries, so that the line is tighter. You throw the line out the window in a lot of these rivalries, so the line may be inflated in that situation. Number 2 is the line is just inflated because the Las Vegas sportsbooks don't know this number. They're making a line thinking the home team home for a second week is better than the road team.
You just told them.
Yeah, well, oops. Well, again, they're not going to adjust because of us. Yeah. They're going to adjust what the public's doing. Yeah. And then thirdly, you put in weather. You start putting in wind. You start putting in snow. You start putting in inclement weather. And that makes the teams even more even to each other because of those situations. So just a couple things I thought of why that may be the case. But clearly, I bet if I asked 95 out of 100 people, they would have said that home team clearly is at 500 or better because of those situations. So knowledge is power, and it's something you need to be informed with as we move on this football season.
And that's why we run the numbers. Numbers don't lie. And like you said, too often somebody says something, and just because somebody said it and it sounds good makes it all of a sudden it becomes gospel or urban legend. And we're here to give you the numbers on that and break those myths. All right, good stuff. As always, Ralph, we're going to head to a quick break, and when we come back, it is going to be college football previews. We will be looking at some of the key games this weekend here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to head into college football, but before we do, I want to tell you about a special offer from our friends at uwager.eu. You can get a 50% sign-up bonus using promo code WT50. That's WT50. Get up to 50% bonus when you open a new account. This is exclusive to our WagerTalk listeners. All right, guys, as we head into college football, we've got some interesting games on Saturday. I'm going to start with one off the top of the chart here. The number one team in the country, and they're up there by themselves. I know Clemson's playing well, but Alabama's on an island by themselves.
Well, there is a line out on an Alabama-Clemson game, which has a very good chance to be the national title game, and it is a line you can bet on. And Alabama is minus 8.5 right now.
Minus 8.5. Interesting number. Over the touchdown, but not 10. It's probably right about where it should be right now. Ralph, we got Mississippi State going to Alabama. You want to talk, is this a possible potential letdown spot for Alabama after the only team that anybody gave a shot until we get to the SEC championship game of giving Alabama a battle? Turned out, if they could, they would have waved the white flag. I mean, LSU, 29-0. It was more dominant than 29-0, if you could actually believe that.
Well, I think it could be a letdown spot simply for the reason that after that game, Nick Saban said we had a team meeting and we wanted to go out and prove that we were a dominant team, and what better circumstance to do that on the road at Death Valley. So when you make that kind of statement, you say those type of statements after the game, I think there's only one way to go in the letdown. But the problem is this Alabama team is so deep. I am not going to step in their way, and if the line's too high for you, you always have to keep the first half play in action. They're 9-0 against the spread in the first half. And while you say, well, Mississippi State looked good, they put up 45 against Louisiana Tech. Well, that same team combined for 16 against Kentucky, Florida, and LSU.
Well, but the one thing on Mississippi State is they're actually a better defensive team than LSU is. LSU got a lot of hype, but Mississippi State's defensive.
And they're a better offensive team if Fitzgerald plays anywhere up to his level.
Yeah, but he hasn't really played to his level. So, and we're deep enough into the season now, so that I think it's safe to suggest that Fitzgerald is just not having a very good year. And it's not some short-term fluke. He's having a bad year. So I don't know that Mississippi State's going to do much offensively here. But their defense actually is better than LSU's. So you can make the argument that that Alabama, particularly with the quarterback still not being totally healthy, they could have some problem putting up big points in this game. And if Mississippi State can get on the board for 7 or 10 points, I think they might have a pretty good chance to cover the spread. I think this might be a lower-scoring game than we normally see out of the Alabama offense.
Well, that defense that you're talking about, Dave, number 5 in the country, allowing just 4.3 yards per play. 9 opponents this year, they held 7 of the 9 to 13 points or less. That's pretty impressive, especially considering you're playing in the SEC conference. I got to agree with you. Right now, the stock can't be any higher than it is right now, and it's been high all year on Alabama. But after what everybody saw in that primetime game last week, there's nobody's going to want to bet Alabama.
I want to throw a question at
bet
you guys.
Against them.
Throw a question at you guys because I don't know if you've seen this yet, but we have a mythical line that was put up by Jeff Sherman, who does a phenomenal job down at the Superbook USA at the Westgate, Las Vegas, and he put up a mythical line. Obviously, you can't bet on it because it will never happen. On a Buffalo Bills Alabama game. What do you think the line was?
I would say he had Buffalo 7. Buffalo 17.
Want to keep going? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking about it. Buffalo would be probably a 7-point home favorite against Arizona Cardinals at home. So I would say 27.
Now you're in the ballpark.
Yeah,
that
thinking
high,
about it.
really.
28.5.
Yeah, and Chris Andrews at the South Point always is such a joke to him when you say, people stop asking me for lines that, those have first and second rounders on every position, where Alabama's going to have 8 or 10 players drafted, but again, not.
The response has been amusing, though, because it's like, was Peterman? And it's like, you're putting way too much emphasis on one position. Yeah. The Bills actually have an above-average I think they have an above-average defense when you consider how bad their offense is. If they had just a respectable offense, this defense...
Yeah, the defense is on the field for 70% of the time.
And it's getting more down.
Alabama
right
Alabama wouldn't score.
Right.
They might score a touchdown. Yeah. Tops. I think 4 touchdowns is about the right number on that game. Good number by Jeff. And but I love the responses from people on Twitter. Yeah. Oh, give me the points.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I saw people trying to float around Duke against Cleveland in the NBA.
Cavaliers are 30.
Yeah.
Literally 30.
Yeah. Okay. It's ridiculous. All right, guys. Moving along, we got Big Ten action. We got Ohio State and we got Michigan State. And, Dave, I'm going to ask you this question with Ohio State.
No. Why? I mean, if it's Ohio State, the answer is no. No, okay, go ahead.
they only have one loss, but really they have no real shot that I see of them having any way of getting in here. There's too many people that got to lose in front of them.
I don't know about that. I think
Georgia's going to play Alabama and lose. Michigan has to play Ohio State.
Well, Ohio State, they're going to
LSU's going to drop if Ohio State gets to a championship game. They'll jump them.
LSU's not going to be in there. If Ohio State would have run the table,
so you're going to leapfrog Ohio State over the Big 12 guys if they run the table.
That's going to be a problem. But here's the thing: if Ohio State were to run the table, I think they get in over a 2-loss SEC team at that point. The SEC would not get their second invite.
Right.
So you would be looking at
Georgia's not going to get in if they don't win the SEC championship game.
So you'd be looking at Alabama and Clemson, which basically have 2 spots locked up at this point. Okay.
And Notre Dame has their spot, unless they lose.
But they can lose.
If Bucs out against USC, all of a sudden that's not a gimme game.
Any Notre Dame loss, they're out.
Right.
Okay. Michigan, Ohio State. If either of those teams runs the table, I think they squeeze in. Oklahoma has to win out to get in. I think if they do, they're in. If Oklahoma wins out and wins their Big 12 championship game, which they finally have this year, then I think Oklahoma has the 3rd spot. So that leaves the 4th spot, and to me, it's whoever runs the table out of all the teams that are left. I don't think Ohio State's going to run the table, but if they do, then they probably rate that last spot.
The problem with Ohio State this year has been uncharacteristically the defense.
The pass defense.
Right.
But that's why this
doesn't come into play.
No, I mean, I love, because I see that 48-3 revenge from last year. And Michigan State, you could argue, is in better form right now because they beat a good Purdue team and actually outplayed Purdue in that game. And then went into Maryland last week. And I know, you could put an asterisk next to it because Maryland was ridiculously distracted with all the off-field turmoil in College Park. But Michigan State still went in and played a good football game. But they can't throw the ball.
Right.
And that's how you beat Ohio State. So this is one of those situations where, the revenge is there, and you can make an argument that the power ratings at this point aren't that far apart. But I'm still a matchup guy.
X's and
O's. Those X's and O's in this game point to Ohio State. So that's going to keep me out of the game because I really don't want the Buckeyes in their current form, but it keeps me away from betting against them here.
I like them here. And I'll tell you what, those last 2 wins of Michigan State, I'm putting asterisks on both of them. The Maryland one, obviously for reasons, but the Purdue one, that's a good win, looks on paper, but they cut Purdue after the biggest win in a decade for that football team.
Purdue was really flat in the first half of that game.
So I'm not sold on, these 2 winning games. Ralph, you're the Ohio State guy. You follow them closely. What do you see in this one?
Well, they have a couple secondary guys out, and, of course, Bosa's out, and that changed the whole dynamics of the defense. And, Bosa's going to be a top 3 pick in the draft, so it is that much of a miss. But, Dave, you're right. I mean, Lewerke is right with Fitzgerald and Jarrett Stidham as biggest disappointments.
I think the other kid, I actually like the other kid better at quarterback now.
Yeah.
Give him the ball. Yeah, I think he's not better than Lewerke at this point, but his ceiling is much higher, and I want to get him the reps.
Yeah, I look at Ohio State, and you line them up man-to-man. No matter how Ohio State's playing, they have better athletes than Michigan State. They have 4- and 5-star recruits. Michigan State has 3s and 4s. And that's why Urban Meyer is 10-3 ATS when they're a dog or laying less than 4 points. If it's in the situation and it's down to Urban Meyer winning a game and Ohio State against Michigan State with this line, I'm going to back the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I agree with the Buckeyes. And you look at Michigan State. Since they got into conference play, the only team that they topped 24 points against was Indiana, and Indiana doesn't have a good defense. I know Ohio State doesn't have a good defense, but they're not going to be able to attack it with that passing attack.
Marco, let's move to the SEC again, and, LSU, we'll see what they do after that disappointing no-show against Bama. They play Arkansas this week. Your thoughts on that game?
This is one of those situations for me. We talk about it all the time. We talk about the Dream Crusher game and everything else. And LSU, they had them in the mix. They were in the top 4. I didn't think they belonged in the top 4.
Neither did I.
And I thought that they did it for that first week to hype that game even more.
I think you're right.
And, so now they're out of it. The aspirations of playing for a national championship, how do they pick themselves up? And not only the letdown from that, but, man, they got taken behind the woodshed. You got to start, questioning your own worth because, they couldn't do anything. Offensively, that was a horror show that I watched from LSU. Now, you look at the flip side to it, Arkansas, they had been playing better. They had won 4 in a row. They lost the last game, and I can't, explain losing to Vanderbilt the way they did in that game. But this is a big game for Arkansas. If you remember, normally this game is played Thanksgiving Friday. This is that rivalry, and this is the bowl game for Arkansas. It's their final home game. I got to look to what I think is a live home dog here because I just think that LSU is going to be flat.
It is difficult, though, because Arkansas does fall into that category of team that just got eliminated from bowl possibilities. They are off their 7th loss, and that's a negative. The flip side of it is it's a terrible spot for LSU. Yeah. Terrible spot for LSU. My play here, if I were to make one, and I'm not, because I'm just not, but I would look at Arkansas first half. I think the talent level is great enough between the two, the disparity, that LSU at some point probably wakes up in the game and gets rid of them. But LSU could come out real sluggish in a matchup like this. It's going to be really impossible for Orgeron to get his team fired up about the prospect of playing Alabama when their hopes for the postseason, which was to get to the playoffs, done. Here's this is the other side of that number 3 ranking, which I think we agree was kind of phony and was probably done to enhance the hype last week. But for LSU, it wasn't. I'm sure the players were like, hey, we're number 3. We're one of the best teams. And they went out and got their ass kicked. It's going to be tough for them to deal with the reality that they've gone from number 3 to being GTFOH. Okay, they're going to the who gives a shit bowl.
Yeah, well, the one thing, we talked about earlier, in the Handicappers Corner, we talked about teams off that 7th loss. And while I think it's important, I think it's less important for Arkansas. These kids came in. They were in a Bielema offense in the past. Mm-hmm. They have a new head coach who they love, who changed systems, so you were going to go through growing pains, and you could finish the season here with a big upset. You're now also fresh, so more of this offense got put in that they can learn. And, again, LSU off a very physical Bama game. That bye situation, to me, is enough to give me certainly a lean on the Arkansas side.
Yeah, and it's a good point that you brought up. Different coach this year, he had the players from the old regime. Now you're seeing, if you look the last 5 games, this team is scoring points now. The last 4, they've scored 31, 33, 23, and 31 points, Arkansas. They're getting his system moving from, what was a running team before with Bielema. I like Arkansas. I think they're a live dog here, and I like the angle. It's a night game. It's the final home game of the season, and you can't possibly catch LSU at a better time than this week. So
well, if they would have beaten Alabama, would have been a better time. But this is the second best.
Yeah. But the thing of it is if they would have won, they had something to play for.
You don't think it would have been a letdown after Alabama win?
It might be a letdown, but even in a letdown situation, you still got something big to play for.
You had a lot to play for.
So you can look at the Purdue-Michigan State game where Purdue was really flat in the first half. They were a missed field goal away from sending the game to overtime, and they'd have had Michigan State cooked at that point. Now LSU basically they're playing for consolation prizes at this point.
This last one, guys, Big 12 matchup. I'm going to call this one, we're going to start our own little title for this one. I've fallen and I can't get up. Because which team is going to pick themselves up off the mat? They both had gut-wrenching losses last week.
But Texas Tech's got a problem because their quarterback's out. He's worth a point or two. And that's where the line swung on this game, because Tech opened as the favorite, and now Texas is the favorite. I'm just not buying the Longhorns, who I thought they're going to be very good down the road because Herman's getting some really good talent in there. And I understand that the loss was a game where they didn't have the starting quarterback in there. But I'm not convinced yet that they have turned. They're not an elite program yet. And they were getting priced like one for a few weeks. That is not the case anymore.
Right.
Coming out of the Oklahoma game, it was. It's like, Texas has arrived.
Yeah.
Not quite yet. But, boy, they're definitely heading in that direction. This is still a bigger game for Tech. Okay, Tech is they get really excited about this game. The problem is with the second unit quarterback in there, it makes things a little bit better for the Texas defense, which needs all the help it can get. And I think I would lean Longhorns in the game. Again, it's not what I don't have a big schedule. I don't have a big slate this week. The games I have, I like a lot, including my 5% play. But this game won't make my card. But if I had to play it, I think I'd probably lean Longhorns.
Ralph, you look at this, and with the quarterback for Texas Tech coming in here, the last 6 games, the difference between these two teams, Texas has only 2 turnovers in their last 6 games. Texas Tech has 12 turnovers in their last 2. How in the last 6? With the backup quarterback and everything, and given last week, how do you see them moving forward this week?
Well, I think the line opened lower than it would have been because, number one, people thought Texas Tech only lost to Oklahoma by 5, but they didn't. The game wasn't that close. Murray had 2 turnovers early. It led to a 14-0 lead, and they got outplayed by a couple hundred yards the rest of the game. Now, the reason I'm going to back Texas on this side is not because it's a backup quarterback. Bowman is out. Bowman is the clear passer on the Texas Tech team, and that's what they want to do. Jerry Duffy is the runner, and he's a different dynamic at quarterback. He can't go back there, pick those passes off like Duffy did. And against Texas's defense, the runner's not going to be the guy you want in against that front.
Texas has speed on defense.
But yeah, I mean I think Texas Tech. I want to pass against Texas Tech. I don't want to run against Texas Tech. Yeah. Now with the back, I don't care if it's a backup quarterback that plays the same system, but he doesn't play the system. He's a running quarterback, which changes the pass Red Raider offense. So for that reason, I have an opinion on Texas. Again, not one of my top plays, but a clear opinion on the Longhorns.
Well, I watched every play of the Texas-West Virginia game last week because I had a big play on West Virginia, got him at the right number, and give the coach credit for West Virginia. Scores the touchdown, and I knew before they even lined up, I said he's going to
try and win the game.
He's going to go for the 2.
He's the opposite of that cream puff coach at Liberty. I was ready to throw something.
Cream puff. Why don't you say what you said on Twitter? Maybe we can't. Maybe we'll get
gutless.
Maybe.
I called him gutless.
Yeah.
I did. I called the coach gutless. Because he didn't go for 2 at the end of the second overtime with a defense that couldn't stop anything. And you're on the road. You got to go for 2 in that situation, and he didn't, and he lost the game in the third overtime. I loved what Holgerson did.
Yeah. I was tired watching the game. I don't know how the players are going up and down the field like that, and then to lose it with, just, what was it, like 12 or 13 seconds left, they scored with that, and then the 2-point conversion. It's going to be tough for them to pick themselves up off the mat, but I agree with you guys. Because of the injuries, I think they're the more complete team right now, and I lean to Texas. But
one note on
by the
that
way,
West
I didn't
Virginia.
mention Liberty coach is Turner Gill, so I shouldn't have to say anything more.
You mean the success he had at Buffalo and Nebraska doesn't impress you? One thing about
I think he
Greer.
was in Kansas, wasn't he?
Kansas, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But Buffalo, he was at Buffalo.
He was at Buffalo first, and then he got Buffalo to the MAC championship and had a good year, and then he went to Kansas. One thing about Will Greer, and I only watched the last couple drives of that game. The clock's running off. I'm going, run, and he is so calm back there.
Yeah.
He just looks like
he's going in slow motion.
I got 2 minutes on the clock. I'm not worried at all. I got 30 seconds. I'm just sitting back here relaxing. I mean, hats off to him. He's a cool cat, man, under pressure.
Greer's going to be an NFL player. I like him.
You should have seen me in that last minute watching that game when they were doing that.
Listen, you got to be thrilled.
It looked like they
when you can't lose when they decide to go for
right.
two,
Oh yeah,
you don't want overtime.
Right. That's the other reason why I was rooting for that.
No, that's the way to coach football.
Yeah.
I mean, there's spots, and we've talked about it. Like we had that London game a few weeks ago where the Titans were just beating the snot out of the Chargers in the second half. And that's a situation where, you know what, let's go to overtime.
You go to overtime, yeah.
Because we get the better team right now.
And in a neutral setting. Yeah.
Well, but to me, it's what's happening in the football game. And the Titans were kicking their teeth in the second half of that game. You want as many plays as possible rather than one. But last week, you don't want to go to overtime.
Nobody was stopping either team.
No.
It was up and down the field.
You got a chance to win it, go for it, and they did. Congratulations.
Good stuff. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the college section. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to head to the NFL. Not the most glamorous week in the NFL this week, but we got to break them down. We'll find some games for you. And then, of course, in the final segment, Best Bets. We'll be back with more here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to head to the NFL, guys. Not a lot of glamorous matchups this week, as I said, but there are some good ones.
Well, and one thing to note, the bettors will make them glamorous because they're all, well, not all, but a lot of them have extra money in their pockets after last Sunday, Black Sunday for the
three straight
for the
Sundays now.
Yeah, but last Sunday was just, oh, boy.
Yeah.
I mean, the books got slaughtered last Sunday.
Yeah. But you know what? I don't see the lights. Dave, you've been here longer than me. I've never seen the lights go out on the strip because of the bettors.
Yeah, they have.
Somebody has to die for the lights to go out.
No. Sport of Kings. Sport of Kings was here in the early 90s, and they were a standalone. And
that was the place
that
across
offered track odds.
On the,
and they got absolutely annihilated by sharp horse bettors.
Yeah,
and
that was across the
literally went out
street
of business.
from what was it? The Landmark. Remember the old Landmark?
Why would you bet at the track if you could come here and not affect your own odds by betting?
I know.
Yeah.
Oh God! If I could have that, oh my God!
You?
Yeah, me.
So, and me too. I mean, because
when you're betting at small track, I mean, let's face it,
$100 bet can move the odds at a small track. If you're betting Thistledown and you like some horse that's 6-1,
you picking out my Thistledown?
Well, I'm just taking them as an example.
Northfield Park.
Well, I don't know. It doesn't.
Northfield actually.
No. The Hard Rock built a casino out in the parking lot, and that saved them.
Oh, okay. Well, then, I'm using just Thistledown as an example of a small track, where if you could see some horse on a morning line of 8-1, and you go in there and you bet $100 at the track to win, all of a sudden the horse is 3-1. Okay, I mean it's just.
The casino has helped. They now have a casino inside Thistledown as well.
Well, but okay,
it's changed. But I understand totally what you're saying.
It's still small time.
I bet $100 once at Northfield and on a horse to win, and the odds changed.
Yeah,
and now that's
that will change the odds because the pools are not
my
big.
home track, the Meadows. I always was trying to bet offshore whenever my horse was live because. I go in and throw $200-$300 to win. It's over for the odds on my horse.
And then you get the steam chasers.
I never bet with inside of a minute of post. A horse owner, there's two, and this is a tip for people out there for the small tracks. If the barn is betting the horse, you're going to see it one of two times. It's either going to come early
or right at the end.
At the end. The early bets come from the people associated with the horse that are working with the horse, and they're in the paddock. They can't bet,
including the jockey.
Okay, so they're doing their bets. They're doing their bets early. The owners, where the real money's at, and firing, they're firing late. And that is a good if you do want to follow, you talk about steam chasers, it is a good angle, especially at the small tracks, to sit there just a minute before post time and see what's live. Listen, know what horse is live.
Back in the old days when Narragansett and Lincoln Park were running in Rhode Island, and I had a lot of connections there, and I knew who was betting and when, and I did pretty well, knowing nothing about the horses, but knowing who was riding, who was training and stuff like that, you could get a pretty good indication, but you had to wait. Anyway,
now to the NFL.
What that had to do was the other sports book that had a problem was, you mentioned the Landmark in I don't remember what year it was. It was sometime in the 80s. They decided to post their own hockey numbers, which were they I don't know who was in charge there, but he decided he could make a better hockey number than anybody else. And they had a group from Canada that came in and just beat the living snot out of them to the point where they had to take the hockey off the board.
Really?
So it basically, and they would be.
That was at the Landmark?
Yep, that was at the Landmark.
I stayed at the Landmark many times when I first started coming out. I liked it. It was the restaurant at the top.
You want to talk about how times have changed. The NC State-Houston NCAA championship game. A guy named Don Venatucci, who's out of Chicago, who's a friend of mine.
What was the name of his server? Yeah.
Win Reports.
Huh?
Win Reports.
Okay.
Don passed away a few years ago. Great guy. And we decided, we're going to watch the game. So let's go over to Landmark. They had a restaurant bar up in the top. Way at the top. It was actually a pretty good spot.
Around.
Yeah. It was a fun spot. So we go to the sports. We were the only two people in the sports book watching the NC State-Houston championship game, which tells you how things have changed over the years in college basketball, because you we wouldn't get a seat now.
Now you're paying $200 to sit down for a March Madness game.
We were the only two people in the book.
Cheap.
We both had NC State plus the points.
Yeah. Sometime we're gonna do a segment where we're doing old stories from Vegas and that. When you were talking about sports books going dark, I thought you were going to go somewhere else. We'll save it because that's a long story. But do you remember Gary Austin's place?
Oh yeah.
That
went dark for a different reason.
Yeah, we'll say that's a story in itself. That could take a whole segment. We'll save that one for another show. But let's go Seattle and the Rams, guys. The Rams, such build-up last week with that game with the Saints. And
lived up to billing, too.
It lived up to billing. It was a 10-point final, but it wasn't a 10-point. I mean, the Saints were cleaning their clock, and Sean Payton took his foot off the gas.
I know he did, and I was just going beside myself in the third quarter. It's like, why are they doing that? They're getting very predictable on offense. You can't do that against the Rams.
And sure enough, here comes the Rams back, tied it up. But give the Saints credit. It's like, we've used several horse racing references tonight. When a horse gets passed, he usually doesn't come back in the lane. The Saints got tied. They didn't get the Rams couldn't stick their nose in front, but they come back and answered as soon as they tied, and give the Saints credit for that. But the Rams, how do they, is this a flat spot?
No,
I know it's a division game.
I don't think it is, and I'm going to tell you why. I loved McVay in the postgame. He was so upbeat. And I think this guy connects with his players. Yeah. I think that positive energy coming out of that post-game press conference last week is going to be evident throughout the week at practice, and I think this team will be fully prepared to take on the Seahawks, and that's bad news for the Seahawks.
It is bad news, but we look at schedules, we look at dynamics. Ralph, here's the facts. The Rams are just completed 4 road games in 5 weeks. No bye week in there. They have a monster game next week in Mexico City against the Chiefs, which is going to be the other top billed game of the season. And the last 2 weeks, they just played Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, and then they played Drew Brees last week. And they got this new sensation coming up next week. You look at it, it's a division game, I get that, but really out of those 4 teams, this is the soft spot where you could look past somebody if you do.
Number one, I think the loss was great for the Rams. No coach wants to be thinking about having to beat Miami's unbeaten record. Players play with pressure down the stretch. You get questioned if you rest people. Now you lost. And, hey, if you play New Orleans again, you have revenge against them in the playoffs. That's another advantage.
It'll be at New Orleans now.
Well, if maybe. New Orleans, I think New Orleans is going to lose another game here or there. So, but anyway, long run, I think it's a positive for the Rams to lose. Now, this week, though, them not having had their bye yet and Seattle having a bye 2 weeks ago, I think is a difference in this game. So, this is the largest dog roll for Russell Wilson in his career. I think Seattle can keep it close and cover. But again, it's a long season now if you're into November and you haven't had your bye yet, playing a fresh team.
I'll throw 2 stats out for you. If you like to look in, we always talk about Belichick and how successful he is. Pete Carroll, as coach of Seattle, off a loss in his career, 30-17 against the spread.
Strong.
If you want to take it off of a home loss, becomes even stronger, 12-4 against the spread off a home loss. I'm going to call for the Rams to get the win, but I'm going to call for Russell Wilson to get the backdoor cover.
Marco, I always question sometimes when you give us these games and look at them, and I'm looking at Dave and said Indyville, Jacksonville, it really is a bad card this week if we're talking about these teams. But to me, it shows what a quality player Andrew Luck is, having the same people on the team as there was there last year and what he's gotten the team to do this year. Has Jacksonville thrown in the towel?
Well, obviously, they've sure played like they have, but a couple points on that. And one thing, the reason it made the card, have you looked at the spreads on the games this week in the NFL? This is one of the most competitive games on the board. Yeah. It's an ugly matchup, but it's one of the most competitive games. For Jacksonville, this is one of those ones, Dave, where I'm going to classify it as, okay, one more time I'm going to give you a chance. You're coming off. You had your bye week. You got Leonard Fournette coming back in. Everybody was saying that was the problem with this team. They didn't have the balance with the running game and the passing game. Blake Bortles was trying to do too much, all of that. And then I'm also looking at this Indianapolis team. Yeah, they've won a couple games in a row. Yeah, they've put up a lot of points. But let's be honest. Who did they beat the last 2 games?
You don't count Buffalo and Oakland as competitors?
I'll tell you what. You could take Buffalo and Oakland and combine the rosters, and I still would not be excited about that team that you would come out with there.
Well, Buffalo's defense with Oakland's offense wouldn't be too bad.
Who's going to get the coaching?
Oakland's offense? What offense?
Yeah,
their offensive line. The offense was supposed to overshadow
Cooper and yeah.
I'm not sold on Indianapolis. I'm looking at Jacksonville here. They're still the number 2 defense.
Well, that's
which they traded one of their players.
Traded one of their studs away, and I don't want any part of them. Look, I agree with you. I think the Colts are fool's gold. Yeah. But if it was anybody else, I'd probably be looking. Okay, give me the team, whoever, plus the points. But I don't think I want the Jaguars right now because they could be in towel tossing mode at this point. I mean, I'm not sure the bye week does anything to help them. In fact, it might make the situation even worse because during that bye week, they traded away one of their best players, which is a sign to the rest of the team that, well, we're not going to make it this year, so we may as well get some draft picks.
This would be a game, Ralph, that would have all of the earmarkings of in-game because you'll know right out of the gate if this Jacksonville team came to play. Because if they didn't and one thing goes bad, you know how you talk about
it's going to unravel.
It'll spiral out of control in a heartbeat. That's where you can jump in on live betting, I think, and make money. I lean to Jacksonville in the game, Ralph, but this is one where you're watching it live. Definitely, I think you can make in-game wagers and improve your odds of winning. How do you see this one?
I don't. I went back and forth, tried to play the game out in my head, and I couldn't come up with a team. So I do agree with your live betting situation.
That makes
we're going to
sense.
know. I mean, Jacksonville lost 4 straight games before their bye by 17 points each. If those guys come out unmotivated, the Colts can be a very live play.
Well, so it's not even unmotivated at this point because I think
they've lost.
They've lost. They are so down. I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says.
You go from Super Bowl favorite in the AFC or close to it.
And they're so down on Bortles. He is a complete liability to that team right now.
Now, if Fournette can do anything, we'll see how much. Yeah, that would help. Well, we'll see.
Triple wing with.
Yeah, really.
All right.
It's kind of. Sometimes I think they ought to get a little more. You know what I'd love to see the Bears do? Triple option. I'm serious. Trubisky with his legs and those other 2 running backs. You know the damage that team could do run on an option offense as a fluke.
It's definitely
team wouldn't be just 1 week where the other team's not going to have any idea it's coming. They'd go wild on them. Yeah. Maybe the Jaguars ought to try that because Bortles is better with his legs than he is with his arm.
For sure. As soon as you, with Bortles, it's not a franchise quarterback. At least they paid him like he was a franchise quarterback. But Trubisky is supposed to be a franchise quarterback. We'll see. Ralph, we got a Cleveland Brown game, so we're going to have to start with you. We've got the Falcons coming to town. You've got Cleveland. Last week, all the turmoil with the coaches getting fired. As we said, it had to be a hard week of preparation last week, with losing both the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and then the guy that takes over is the defensive coordinator, and he's a head coach, and who runs this offense that's been the whole reason why everything unraveled because the 2 guys, it was a power struggle, pure and simple, between Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson. Yeah. It's just what happens now, but it's the second week. Do we have more continuity this week?
I don't think so. You have an OC who used to be Arizona's quarterback coach, and now he's calling plays for the first time. You saw a defense that has regressed the last couple weeks because Baker Mayfield's making turnovers and going 3 and out. And on the flip side, you have an Atlanta team that Ryan started the season with a 2-2 ratio, but since that time he's 18-1. So the way he's moving the ball, Cleveland I don't think has the offense to match him. And yes, Atlanta's had their their defensive issues in the secondary with injuries, but I don't think the Browns can exploit that. So to me, it's the Falcons.
And Atlanta got a win they had to have last week, and they got it with probably their best 60 minutes of the season at Washington. So they've got some positive momentum coming in. And on the flip side, 3 words, it's the Browns. They're just back to being the dysfunctional franchise that can't get anything right, and they looked absolutely terrible the last 2 weeks.
Dave brought up to me, just on the side, we were at the radio show talking, he goes, well, shouldn't they bring Taylor back in now at this point because he's not going to turn the ball over? He's more mature. You've got a guy who doesn't know how to call plays. He can run plays better from a new OC than Baker can. Baker just learned the old offense, and now he's trying to learn the adjustments to the new one.
To me, if you can sit the rookie quarterback, go ahead and do it. And they're not going to win anything now anyway, and they won't do it. I mean, because it makes too much sense, and the Browns would never do something like that. But I actually would go to Taylor, because if you're going to lose the games, let the kid learn. And besides which, losing the games is not the worst thing that can happen to Cleveland right now. The more you lose, the better your draft pick.
Well, do remember, though, the Browns have Dorsey now as their GM. It's the first year here. He was at Kansas City the last 4 years and has been a genius. So, when you say it could be the Browns and they're not going to do it, with Dorsey now in charge, we'll see what happens.
I don't know. I think the Cleveland fans might go nuts because they,
I agree with that.
And I think that plays into it. They want to sell tickets.
If you're going to screw your fan base, then that's one thing you can't do.
It's a business. You want to sell tickets.
But you're risking ruining Baker, his confidence. I mean,
I just think, to me, and I don't know, I'm not a quarterback, but there just seems to be compelling evidence that when you're a rookie, you learn more not being in the game than you do being in the game when you can't catch up to what the hell's going on anyway. I agree with Ralph. I'd play Atlanta or nobody here.
I just want to mention one thing. You talked about rookies sitting, and we saw Baker Mayfield look good when he came in against the Jets. We saw Darnold look good when he went in Detroit, but then DCs get film on the guy.
Yes.
Now, I want to bring this up because of we're not talking about the game, but Mullen in San Francisco looks so good. Well, no one had film on Mullen in an NFL game. Now they do, and I expect him to regress quite a bit. People think now, oh, my God, this guy's great. Wait to see when they have a game film on you and the adjustments they make.
It's one of the games that we actually did a video this week, Wager Talk, so go check out the video. We did that Monday night game with the Giants in San Francisco. For me in this one, guys, it's funny. Both of you guys are on Atlanta this week.
But I don't know if I'll bet it, but that's the only side.
But that's the
really
side you'd lean to.
Yeah.
And if I do remember, you guys were busting my balls pretty good last week. And I had Atlanta when both of you guys were on Washington last week.
I was.
Yeah.
I had Atlanta on Washington.
I went 4-0 last week, so I sure wasn't on Washington. But I was not convinced I didn't have the Falcons. And I was not convinced the Falcons had I knew it was a must-win game, but I didn't trust them. I really didn't trust him to win the game.
You were just busting his balls because he's Marco.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what
you were jumping on the bandwagon. You were
thinking it was because of your pick. We're just busting your chops anyway.
If I had to play that game last week, I probably would have played Washington. So I'm glad I didn't play it, obviously.
But now I'm on the Cleveland side in this one. I think the second week that there's going to be more continuity. It can't be as bad as it was last week. And, guys, let's face it, and
that wasn't meant to be funny.
No.
Why? Because to me, I think they're a disintegrating team.
They are, but you usually get a spark whenever you get a coach firing. We didn't get that last week.
This coach has no chance to get the full-time job. So I think that does enter into the equation. Look, Dick, I got to tell you, I honestly believe it's a done deal. I think they're going after the Oklahoma guy.
It would make sense if he's gonna leave the college ranks and go to the NFL. This is the spot where he goes. No question. He's got the continuity of the experience of already molding Baker Mayfield to what they did.
He looks like an NFL coach anyway. I mean, so this is why I'm debating this with you. Do you get the normal spark out of what is now, to me, a lame duck interim coach? Greg Williams will not be. If Lincoln Riley or whoever else comes in, they're going to clean house, and this guy's not going to be there. So do the players respond to a guy they know is not going to be part of their future?
On that side of the coin, you do. But on the same token, do you want to show that you're a quitter? Because the new coach coming in is going to be looking at the game film, and if you see guys that have dogged it or quit, do you want that guy on your team?
Fair enough.
And on the same token, Williams is auditioning for wherever he's going to land next. This is his opportunity to put out his audition tapes as a coach wherever he's going to be. The last point I'm going to bring out with Atlanta, this is the second week in a row on the road. This is still a team that doesn't play the same on the road as they play at home, and it's not like the three teams that they beat in this 3-game winning streak is world beaters. Tampa Bay, we know, has no defense.
Right.
The Giants, they have nothing. In Washington, I just didn't think Atlanta was going to be able to trade, that Washington with Dink and Dunk Smith would be able to trade points with Atlanta last week, and I thought the line was a little bit high because people were overrating Washington because of their misleading scores, in my opinion. I think Cleveland has a chance, second week in a row at home with, now you've got the second week under the coach. Hopefully they, iron some things out. In Baker Mayfield, if he can get back to those first couple games, he's got the happy feet right now. He's holding the football. He looks like a rookie. He's holding the football too long and taking sacks. Before, he was either unloading the football or taking off running. Now he's caught in that hesitation mode. If they can correct that, I think they got a shot. Last thing, Atlanta, last 2 seasons against AFC opponents. Now, granted, this is probably one of the worst AFC opponents that they can face. They are 0-6 against the spread versus the AFC.
The only thing people talk about a coaching change, and they have to remember, this is historic in the NFL, losing an OC and a head coach at the same time. So now you've got a new guy on DC. You got a new guy on head coach. You got a new guy on OC. You got a new guy on the quarterback coach because he moved up. So now all of a sudden your top 4 coaching positions have all new people, and that's never been done before. It's usually a coach or an OC, just not one of them, not 2 of them, which changes the entire dynamic. And again, the part of the reason I think they're still going to be scrambling the next few weeks.
Now, I know this much. Atlanta will be getting all of the bets on Sunday with the
we think that, but yet people still bet the Browns.
Well, no, it's not the ticket count.
Ticket count. Yeah, the public.
Same thing with this next game. We know the ticket count's going to be in New England, Tennessee.
Right.
Okay, the ticket count's going to be heavy on the Patriots. But I got to tell you, this is a scary spot for them because the Tennessee defense is real. It's a really good defense, and Patriots win a statement game. They're not sweating the division. I know Miami's got a decent record, but Patriots are going to win the division. And they just won a game they had to win. Look, I know they went into Chicago in a similar type situation, flat spot, and they beat the Bears, but the Bears also came 1 yard away.
The Bears beat themselves in that
yes,
game,
they did.
too. There was special teams play. There are a couple big plays for New England in that game. It was a 7-point game.
The Bears acquitted themselves well. I think Tennessee, with a defense that's playing really good football.
And I think Mariota looks reborn.
He does look better.
He's better the last couple games that I've seen him in 2 years. So.
Now, can the student hang in with the teacher? Because it is Mike Vrabel going against Bill Belichick. I think it's a pretty good game. I don't know if it'll make my card or not, but I'm looking at the Titans.
And you talk about Mariota, Ralph. For me, the difference in what Mariota's doing right now is to what he was doing last year, and that he's back to running the football. And I think that they're utilizing all of his assets. He's a better quarterback when he's on the move.
Dave and I were talking about him and Cam Newton both. When they're running the ball, the offenses are 10 times better.
Absolutely. And he's run the football 17 times in the last 2 games, which they weren't doing that before with him. This is a key. In New England, you look at their 4 road games this year. New England has not played good on the road. The one game that they covered was Buffalo, and they shouldn't have covered that game.
And they basically just, it was Buffalo.
Right.
They showed up for the game.
But Buffalo had an opportunity before the pick 6. Buffalo had an opportunity to punch it in and make it an interesting game, at least. I got Tennessee in this one. I think the home dog is live here. Tennessee, they're not fun to watch because they don't score a lot of points. It's ugly football, but they're staying in it.
Personally, I love that kind of football. To me, that's real football. I'm not going to say I was bored by the 45-35 with the Rams and Saints, and I'm not going to be bored when the Chiefs play the Rams. I mean, that's going to be fun stuff. But I like slugfests like this with.
So you love the old steel curtain Steelers,
Pittsburgh, Baltimore
games?
I
do. Yeah. Yeah, because to me, you knew it was
a few years ago. It's going to be a 3-point game. Which one's going to win?
You know it's going to come to the wire. One big play can make a huge difference in the game. When there's 90 points being scored in a game, one big play doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. And that's one of the things I like about the Titans. They've been in some good football games, to me, some good football games this year because their defense plays so well, they hang in, and if they can make a play at some point on offense, we saw them do it against the Eagles, and we could see it again here.
If they're in a tight game,
we should have seen it against the Chargers.
If they're in a tight game, they know they can do it because they've already done it. So that's a good point there.
And winning a couple close games, winning that Chargers game in London. You win a couple close games like that. To me, those are more important than winning by 10 or 12. You can do it. San Diego, I think, went right down the first play, first drive, led 7-0, and then the defense adjusted. It looked
like it was going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah, and then you make those adjustments and you win those close games. To me,
unfortunately, they didn't win that close one because
they
went for the two.
They went for the two, which they shouldn't have done.
Misspoke there, guys. Sorry.
No, it was a Freudian slip because they were the better football team in that game. But the fact is, they know they were the better football team in that game. They did win against the Eagles. They did get a good win last week. No, I think this team's live right now, and I think they've got a real chance to make the playoffs.
Belichick and Brady, it's tough to go against them, but that was a big game last week against Green Bay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for as long as both of those guys have been in the league.
Is Gronk playing this weekend? I don't know. They're a different team without him, and they even were last week.
Absolutely. And the running back, too. He didn't play last week.
Why did I blank? By the way, who they're getting back this week, though? Burkhead.
Okay.
And he's an integral part of their offense.
Both running and catching it out of the backfield.
Yep.
So, all right, guys. That wraps up the NFL. We're going to head to Best Bet section. We'll be back with Best Bets here on the WagerTalk Podcast. That's up next.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're in the home stretch, turning for home. It's Best Bet time. Last week, depending on your line with Dave, when we released on Thursday, it was actually a winner. Then it became a push. And then if you played it at game time, it was a loser with Texas A&M.
That's why you don't play bad lines.
That's
exactly. Beat it over and over and over again. If you keep playing beat-up numbers and intentionally giving yourself the worst of it, you're going to cost yourself money.
And if you're listening to this late and you don't get the line, just don't play the game. Even if you have to listen next week and you say the game won, don't play that game if you're getting the worst of the line, if it's moved that much by the time you're listening to the podcast. So in the long run, you're going to – I know people say, I don't want to miss a winner. Well, I'll tell you what. If you miss a winner and you put on a loser, you're better off because you're giving 1.1% up with the extra loss.
And that was a tough one to take because Texas A&M led the whole game.
They choked the game.
Yeah.
They choked it away. They had a pick and then a couple of other bad plays. And, it's just they've lost.
Auburn was never ahead till the final score.
I know. Auburn was getting killed in the game. Anyway.
This week.
Boy.
Got Rolf's cough there.
The last 3 weeks, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I think it's like 9-3, and then a 6-3, and then last week 7-3-1 in the colleges. That's a pretty good run.
Absolutely.
The NFL's been good too because it went 4-0 last Sunday, and then I think 2-1 the week before. So that's been doing pretty well. So the colleges are hot, and I'm not going to have as big a card. You've just heard those number of games, like 12 one week, 11 the next. I might only have like 5 or 6 games this week.
But you've got other stuff, and I forgot to.
But the thing is, I like the quality. Now I have a 5% play. The line's gone up a little bit from where I put it out, but I still think it's a good side. I got a big buy sign in this team last week, and I think the other team has probably called it a season. I have my upset special is on the site. I've got another game that I'm blanking on right now, and I'll probably be adding. I'm going to probably add a play on the Baylor-Iowa State game. In fact, I think I'll do that probably this evening. So the quality of the plays will be good, in my opinion. The free play I posted on the site is the one I'll use as the best bet here. Now, I do want to give you a little caution on this one. I played Maryland +3 against Indiana. I played it early. It's not 3. The 3 is gone. I would still play this because I think Maryland is going to win the football game. But just proceed a little more cautiously if you're only getting +1 or +2 because it's simply not as good as +3 and it's not as valuable. But I still would take Maryland. Here's the reasoning. Look, last week was just, I can't imagine what it was like to be a student. Forget a football player, just a student at Maryland last week. That school opened itself up for more ridicule in a 24-hour period than any school in recent memory when the Board of Regents somehow decided to reinstate Durkin as the head coach. It's like, what the blank are you thinking about?
And the trainers had been working this whole time.
I know.
They just got let go yesterday.
Yes.
So,
well, the point is, the next, no, they were on leave.
Oh, they were?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, none of them had been working. They were on administrative leave. The next day, after this enormous outcry, then the president of the school decides on his own, well, no, I'm sorry, I'm overruling the Board of Regents. And he fires the coach. And then the next day, the Board of Regents head person, she, whatever, she resigns, he resigns. So it was just a calamity last week there. So it's no wonder they went out on Saturday and just played a terrible football game against Michigan State. I think getting on the road's the best thing for Maryland right now. They need one more win to be bowl eligible. They've bounced back off every bad game they've had this week with a good game the next week. Indiana has had the bye, which I guess you could say is a plus, but they're on a losing streak. And even if they win here, they've got at Michigan and then Purdue to finish the season. So they're probably not going to get to the bowl. And it's going to take an upset someplace for them to get to a bowl game. I think it's a really disappointing season for Indiana at this point. I'd rather have the team with more to play for, and I think more motivation as well. I like Maryland.
All right, Ralph, before we get to you, I want to say the best way to pick up this week, you said you've got a 5% and everything.
Get a package.
Get the 7-day. We got a special going this week at WagerTalk. You can get 7 days for the price of 3. Use coupon code TV59. That'll get you a 7-day package. You pick the capper you want. You can use that coupon as many times as you want, but you have to use it before kickoff on Monday. The football game, once it kicks off, that deal's done. And we ran this special once earlier this year, Ralph. It was a tremendous response with it. We brought it back this week because college basketball tipped off, and there's no better time to get a 7-day package. This is the one time of the year every major sport is running except baseball, basically. Yep. You're getting everything: hockey, basketball, college basketball, NBA, college and pro football. Get it all. And Dave, I know you've been hot on your hockey plays.
It's been good.
As well.
I went 0-2 on Tuesday, which ended a real nice streak. I had a pair of underdogs that missed, but you're not going to win every night.
And Ralph, you're off and running with the college basketball season. I know you've been waiting for this for a long time. You've had a great football season, and college basketball's here. They should jump on a 7-day package with you. And who do you got for a best bet for us this week?
I'm going the SEC, and I'm going with Tennessee. Kentucky learned who they were last week, losing to Georgia, and, all their hopes of anything they were dreaming, they were never going to come to fruition, but now they know that. Now you have Kentucky as a favorite in Tennessee. Well, for the last 40 years, Kentucky's never been a favorite to Tennessee. Tennessee now can knock off this Kentucky team and have a good win. Kentucky is 0-10. ATS is a favorite. Their last 10 rolls as a favorite. And when Kentucky's traveled to Tennessee, they haven't won by more than 5 points in 1981. This is just one of those historical series that, because what's happened the last few weeks, that the line is inflated. But again, history will show when you have this type of rival and you're going in a unique situation as an away favorite, I'm going to back the dog 8 out of 10 times, and I will back him this game.
I do have a question, by the way, on the special. What's it? What's the code again?
TV 59.
Does that include your plays from the professional bull riding? You're going to the PBR.
You know what? If you're going to want to get some plays from the bull riding, you're going to have to get them from my wife. She likes the Cowboys a little more than I do, and Dave mentioned that just because that's where I'm heading when this podcast is over.
It's fun. I've never been to it live.
It is fun.
It's fun to watch on TV. Those guys have got a lot of guts.
And
I'm
it's
telling
quick.
you.
Guts is
10 seconds is
one. Yeah, guts is one way to say it. There's a fine line between guts and stupidity.
Well, I don't know. Well, look, I mean, I didn't grow up around that stuff, so I don't know. Maybe it's different if you grow up around it. But
you got a cowboy hat, Marco, to wear?
I do have one. I won't wear it tonight, but full disclosure, whenever PBR comes, or the NFR, this is PBR tonight, when the NFR comes in December, that's like an 11-day event.
It's awesome. And the people are just the salt of the earth. The service industry loves the NFR people because they spend money and they're real pleasant to be around. Can't wait for them to be here again.
All right, and just so you guys know, when I moved here, for the first year, I was wondering, why is Pabst Blue Ribbon getting all this publicity? I didn't know it was a Pro Bull Riders Association, so that shows how stupid I was.
PBR is fun, and it's at the T-Mobile now.
Which
is just an amazing facility.
But whenever the NFR comes, that 11 days, as you said, there's so much money floating around town. Well, Cowboys and people from Texas like to play poker, my friends. And that's like the first week of December, and they're here for 11 days. That's when I go get my Christmas money for all my shopping because I hit
you
the
get
strip.
A room for the week at the strip, and
I
that's
go
it. You
on
never
the strip,
leave.
and you know what?
Listen, that's the 1 week where it goes back to its original name. It's not Hold'em. It's Texas Hold'em.
It's Texas Hold'em. And Dave, because I want to blend in like I'm a local, I put the cowboy hat on. I put the boots on. Go down and play, so I look like a country bumpkin into town. Oh, I seen this on TV. I sit down and play. Yeah, it's a very good week.
What makes you a country bumpkin? The hat?
Well, yeah. I got to get one shot from Ralph a week, and he fired and hit, direct hit. All right, you win on that one. On that note, after you called me a country bumpkin there and that. The country bumpkin is found a lot of pumpkins the last week. I've been on a nice little run myself, guys. 12-3 with my last 15 plays. Since October 14th, 28-13.
Hello.
Which is we've picked up a 42% bankroll increase. So I highly recommend the 7-day package for the price of 3. You're never going to get it that cheap again, guys. That's as cheap as we get it. Pick that up for $59. Again, pick as many cappers as you want. You can use that coupon over and over up until Monday. For my best bet, I'm going to the NFL. I said it wasn't a glamorous week, and we're not taking a glamorous team. But, guys, this is a situational play for me that I can't pass up. And you've got the Saints coming off that monumental game last week. And we talk about buying low, selling high. Right now, the stock on the Saints cannot possibly get any higher than it is after last week. They took the team that everybody thought was a shoo-in to go to the Super Bowl, the Rams, and they pretty much had their way with them, except for that one period there in the third quarter when the Rams made that comeback. Now they go back out on the road, and this is going to be their third road game in 4 weeks, and they're coming off playing Minnesota revenge. That was the big playoff revenge for them. They had the game with the Rams, and then now they go on the road to play Cincinnati, and after that, who do they get at home? But last year's defending Super Bowl champs. I just think this is a horrible spot. You're getting a home dog with Cincinnati coming off a bye week. Yes, A.J. Green is out for Cincinnati. That hurts their offense some, but the Saints are not the same team outdoors, in the weather, away from the dome. I'll take Cincinnati plus the points.
And by the way, you mentioned the weather. I did look at that game and the Cleveland game. Temperature early, low 40s or high 30s, so definitely going to be a factor.
All right, there you have it, guys. We've got Maryland from Dave. We got Tennessee, College Tennessee, the Vols. And you got Cincinnati for me, the Bengals, plus the points for the best bets. I want to thank our guests tonight, Vegas Runner. Also, big thanks to Ralph Michaels and Dave Cokin for joining me on the show. Mark Seidel for running the soundboard, making sure we sound good. And, of course, that big shout-out to our guy in Detroit, Johnny Detroit. He stays up, gets this podcast out to all of the media outlets that we do. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. You can listen on Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. And last but not least, a big thanks to you guys, our listeners, who tune in each and every week. Guys, we appreciate it. You taking the time to listen to us, guys, try to win you some money, and we appreciate that. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Until next week, let's cash some tickets. I'll talk to you next week, guys.